Tonight, pressure at the highest levels. The G7 summit ends with a hard 30-day deadline for Canada and the U.S. to strike a new trade deal. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre heads into uncharted territory with a leadership review.
And I'll have my Stanley Cup obituary after the Panthers humble the Oilers to take the championship 4-2. From Montreal and 4 floors up from your host, this is Night Talk, episode 38. I'm Eddie Tekalik.
And I'm Gary MacDonald with a reminder for you to join the conversation. We want to know what you are thinking. Post a comment in the YouTube or Facebook chat, and we will respond to as many as possible. Now it's politics, power, and playoffs. Let's go. The G7 summit wrapped up in Alberta yesterday after 2 days of talks about all things financial and security. Prime Minister Mark Carney was the conference chair and used the opportunity for a one-on-one session with U.S. President Trump, but not before having to tactfully shut down Trump.
But we have a very talented group of people, and you do too, and I know they've worked together very well. I look forward to that. The G7 used to be the G8. Barack Obama and a person named Trudeau didn't want to have Russia in. And I would say that was a mistake, because I think you wouldn't have a war right now if you had Russia in. And you wouldn't have a war right now if Trump were president 4 years ago. But it didn't work out that way. But it used to be the G8, and now it's, I guess, what's that, 8 years ago, it switched over. They threw Russia out, which I claimed was a very big mistake. Even though I wasn't in politics then, I was very loud about it. It was a mistake in that you spend so much time talking about Russia, and he's no longer at the table, so it makes life more complicated. But you wouldn't have had the war. Other than that, I think we're going to accomplish a lot, and I expect to. And I think our primary focus will be trade and trade with Canada, and I'm sure we can work something out.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so much. Thank you very
All
much.
blue cities, all Democrat-run cities, and they think they're going to use them to vote. It's not going to happen.
Mr. President, it would take 2 weeks to decide if
Thank you. If you don't mind, I'm going to exercise my role, if you will, as G7 chair, since we have a few more minutes with the president and his team, and then we actually have to start the meeting to address some of these big issues. So, alors merci beaucoup pour vos questions et puis. Thank you.
That's it.
That's it. Thank you very much. Out. So, guys, out.
Now, both were pressed by reporters on a possible new trade deal.
I think we have different concepts. I have a tariff concept, and Mark has a different concept, which is something that some people like. But we're going to see if we can get to the bottom of it today. I'm a tariff person. I've always been a tariff. It's simple, it's easy, it's precise, and it just goes very quickly. And I think Mark has a more complex idea, but also very good. So we're going to look at both, and we're going to see what we're going to come out with something.
Do you think a deal is achievable within days, within weeks? Is there that kind of runway?
Yeah, it's achievable. Both parties have to agree. Yeah, sure.
Now, shortly after the brief meeting, it was announced both sides had agreed to hammer out a deal within 30 days, which leads to our audience question: should Canada move quickly to strike a trade deal with the U.S.? Then Carney opened the summit with a thought-provoking message.
We're meeting at one of those hinge moments, those turning points in history. The world's more divided and dangerous. Hostile states and terrorists have expanded their capabilities and their reach, threatening global security in our local communities. Global commerce, energy systems, even intelligence are all being rewired. Nostalgia isn't a strategy. We have to change with the times and to build a better world. And some of you, such as you, Mr. President, have anticipated these massive changes and are taking bold measures to address them. All of us around this table are reinforcing our militaries and security services for the new world. But we all know that there can be no security without economic prosperity, and no prosperity without resilience. And in a world where shocks flow across the borders, that resilience comes from cooperation around that starts around this table, cooperation that can lead to a new era of prosperity, energy security and critical minerals, artificial intelligence, quantum, combating human smuggling and transnational repression. So we will have open, frank discussions over the course of the next 2 days. We might not agree on absolutely every issue, but where we will cooperate, we will make an enormous difference for our citizens and for the world, and bring the next era of prosperity, I hope, to the benefit of those we serve.
Quite a message in his opening round of the official meeting, and Trump was sitting to his left. Mm-hmm. And you notice how he kept, throughout the clips we've had, he kept playing to Trump in a way. But if you really watched his body English, watched some of his facial expressions, especially when Trump was speaking, you could tell that there were times he was just really holding back, like,
yeah,
you know, and very much playing the statesman and diplomat to keep things moving along. And regardless, Trump left early, as he did the last time in Charlevoix, although it was under, I think, more circumstances of Trump was really ticked at Trudeau than this time around, although he may have been wanting to avoid the Indian Prime Minister Modi and also the Mexican president and Zelensky as well, and use the Mideast warm up as the excuse to leave town. But he stayed for the dinner and then left after the what they called the family dinner. Mm-hmm. So Carney is getting high marks all the way around in a lot of the media opinion op-ed pieces and from pundits, you know, on television. I was really very, very much impressed, and we'll see him at work with Zelensky a little bit later on, but I was very, very much impressed with how he handled the summit and as chair of the summit and how he represented the country. Your thoughts?
Yeah, you know what I think is coming to play here as well, Gary. I agree with everything you're saying. Way back when we were speaking about the liberal leadership campaign and the leadership of the country, becoming prime minister and whatnot, we all had kind of our concerns about not having a seasoned politician running the helm in Canada, you know, and we kept on saying, well, you know what, maybe his experiences as governor for the Bank of Canada and governor for the Bank of England are going to come into play because he has experience dealing with the political type and the billionaire type. You know what, Gary? That is coming through to fruition right now. I mean, since day one, I mean, even since before he actually officially got elected as Prime Minister of Canada, when he was just, interim and inherited it due to his Liberal leadership win, he has been very articulate, very informative, very fact-based, and he's been able to deal with any question that came from the media. We saw how well he performed during the prime ministerial debate. And now we're seeing him perform as Prime Minister of Canada on the global scale. I've watched numerous clips of his activity within G7, both pre and post commentary, and he has been absolutely handling himself like a pro. He's a professional, both as an economist, a global economist, and you know what? He's definitely showing his mettle as the prime minister of a G7 country. And, you know, with every passing week that goes by and there's a new situation that he has to deal with, whether it's domestic, American-related, or globally related, he seems to speak as a leader with a mission And the more and more he speaks, the more and more I believe that if he says he's going to do something, he seems to be on a path that he's going to get it done. So, Gary, I have a very hard time disagreeing with the op-eds in, whether it's newspaper or mainstream media in terms of how well he has performed thus far. Very, very hard to criticize him. I'm really impressed.
Very much so. And, there's a few questions being raised about this 30-day trade deadline. And you heard Trump when he was asked by a reporter about, is the deal near? Are we looking at 2 weeks, a month, or whatever? And then they come back with the 30-day side of it. And it's my understanding from what I've read that in the back rooms, it was Carney pushing for the deadline. And how many times has he said in the last couple of weeks that we're only going to go so long before we move, if nothing is happening, we will move to the tariffs. Yeah. And have reciprocal tariffs imposed on U.S. goods. I think behind the scenes, he basically said, but we need to get this done in 30 days, period. Time's marching on, it has to be done. And somehow he managed to get Trump to agree to the 30-day deadline. Now, again, it's Trump we're dealing with. So you can't take that to the bank tomorrow and deposit it and think it's going to remain in your account for more than an hour, because that's just the way this guy is. So, but still, it gives Carney now the fact that, well, okay, the Americans agreed to this, and if we don't get a deal done in 30 days, well, then we're going to hit hard. And he now has established a line in the sand with the agreement of the Americans. So that was a unique little twist, I think, that he managed to pull off there. And hopefully that, we do get something coming out of this. My big concern now is that because of some of the pressures from within the Canadian economy, that we may end up settling for not the best deal in the world, just to get a deal. And, they can say, well, it's the best we could get at this point in time. Is it really? Is it really going to be if we lose to a certain degree? They're beginning to hurt. They're beginning to feel it. Mm-hmm. And more so, and look at it on Monday with the Eastern Canadian premiers and governors meeting, and the governors are saying, look, especially the tourist dollars, we're hurting. We missed our Canadian friends coming down and spending their money. And I saw a good line today, and I can't remember where, but it was an article I was glancing at, and it said, really, do they really miss Canadians, or is it that they just miss our money?
Yeah.
And I couldn't agree with that more.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. You know what? They're hurting. We're hurting too, but I'm sorry, you guys started this fight. Maybe not necessarily the beautiful state of Massachusetts or Maryland or the northern or the New England states. I know they didn't particularly start it, but you're in the United States of America. Your country started something that I don't think have been well prepared in dealing with it, short term or long term, which goes back to the 30 days. Mm-hmm. My feeling is, Gary, I don't think that Prime Minister Carney is going to push an agenda of 30 days and not get what he's after. I think he's really smart. He probably has plan C and plan D in his back pocket. If he doesn't get what he needs in 30 days, that'll better our country. defend our jobs, and defend our economy. He's got a plan B, C, and D. Emperor Orange can't think further than the next day, depending on whether he had a bowel movement or not. He'll change his mind. He'll think of something different. When was the last time we heard anything extraordinarily strategic or anything that makes sense since he took over the reins with the rest of his cohorts that work for him? It's just not there. It's, one day this, one day that. So I believe that Prime Minister Carney has got a 3 or 4 point plan in terms of, if I don't get what I need, this is what I'm going to be doing. And you know what? Gary, good on him for pushing the agenda to get a response from the United States of America in 30 days, because we warned you, we told you, and we talked about this ad nauseum, Gary. We have our government opposition pushing for Prime Minister Carney to table a budget. The man needs to table a budget. He needs to know what he's going to be dealing with before he can get his team to iron out a budget based on what the economy is going to look like this week, next month, 6 months from now, and a year from now, and have a plan where he can actually put a budget on the table so Parliament can vote on it, and let's get on with it. So he can't wait until Donald Trump feels like giving an answer. You know what? At the end of the day, he might end up being Taco, which everybody's been classifying him as for the last couple of weeks. And let's move forward. We have a country to run. We have a country to live in. We have lives to build on, and that starts with what our leaders in Parliament are going to be putting before us. And the more firm we can get in terms of our plan and push forward, and you know what? At the end of the day, Gary, there might be some things he's not going to be able to get, which may be painful to certain industry in Canada. There's no way around it, okay? Because a lot of our economy is based on the United States and what they do. But I think within each one of his plans, A, B, C, and D, there is that entire clause or the entire program where, you know what? We're going elsewhere for our business. We're going to conduct business with all the other countries that want to work with Canada to mutually grow economically and as countries. And when Trump left the G7, I bet you any money they probably had the most productive of conversations without having to dance around hurting Donald Trump's feelings and him coming up with something that's going to steal the spotlight or steal what the agenda is for the G7 meeting. You know what? So I think he's got a plan, and I don't think he's going to risk Canada for the sake of risking Canada to appease Trump. I don't think that's there. At least he hasn't demonstrated any sort of weakness in my view so far.
Now, we've had a couple of comments which I brought up on screen a few minutes ago, but just to summarize those comments, let's just see if I can bring that. Yeah. Nancy Thorne says, Canadians' money, they miss the Canadians' money.
Yes, they do.
Yep. And let's see. We had one more here. Monel was quick off with the response to our question. My knee-jerk reaction is no, but then again, whatever is best for the country. And that's, of course, in response to our question, should Canada move quickly to strike a trade deal with the U.S.? 30 days, I really think that he had to send a message to the U.S. negotiating team in general, and that helped to move them along to get this 30-day timeline. And of course, Trump being Trump and being the supposed deal maker and loves the art of the deal. If it's almost like a challenge to him. I'll get a deal in 30 days, and if we do get something in 30 days, he's going to be claiming all of the glory that it was my deal making ability that I could do this in 30 days. But I just hope that I don't doubt that the Prime Minister has a plan and has 2 or 3 backup plans in his pocket. And he's off to Europe on Sunday again for the NATO meeting in The Hague. And then he's meeting with the European Union people again. So he's really driving home the fact that, hey, Canada is looking at new trading partners and opening up, more trade with our partners in Europe, for example. He's really driving that home. And now when you have the governors on Monday, the Eastern governors, and some of the other governors who have states on the border, and they're all saying the same thing, like, we're hurting. We're missing your money. Well, we're missing you. Translation, we're missing your money. And it's really starting to impact some of the smaller businesses along the border, never mind some of the larger businesses as well. And God bless Canadians. We're not giving up on that aspect of it. Most Canadians are still saying, like, yeah, no, sorry, I'm not stepping across the border. And even some business people say, I'm not doing a business meeting. I'm not flying to a business meeting in the United States because I don't know what's going to happen at the border. Now, these governors can say that, everything is fine. We're going to welcome you with open arms. But what they're forgetting is you have to get through that border checkpoint first.
Yeah.
And there's a renewed sense of, I don't know if I'd call it bully, or a renewed sense of, almost mobster mentality, maybe a real stretch, but the border people now feel as if they have these superpowers, I guess.
Yeah, emboldened.
And so who wants to go through that before you actually get on, underway on a vacation, have them go through your phone and tear your vehicle apart and maybe find some kind of a thing like, okay, everybody in this vehicle can enter except that one. They have to go home.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't know what's going to happen. Who needs that aggravation? And now the government just announced this plan, Boost Canada or something, where you've got free passes to the national parks and a number of national museums and things. And then teens can ride via rail at a reduced rate or free pass.
I think it's under 18, it's free. Yeah.
Yeah. This is great stuff. And this is something that I have yacked about for years when we were spending money on some of these crazy cultural celebrations and things designed to promote, cultural appreciation and unity within the country. And they were so far-fetched, it was just a waste of time and money.
Right.
Why didn't we, and why haven't we put our efforts into either some kind of a tax break that you can write off a good portion of your airfare, your travel expenses? New Brunswick did this during the pandemic to promote some travel within the province.
Yeah, you were saying,
Yeah. And you could claim back up to a certain percentage of your expenses. This is something that we should be doing and should have been doing for years in this country to promote national unity and to help us understand and appreciate our country from coast to coast to coast.
Well, didn't some premiers say that, I forget if it was a premier or heads of travel in Canada, they were basically saying we have an enormous country. Okay.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of decent players in the airline industry across the country, headed by Air Canada, of course. I mean, then you got your WestJets, and then you have your small tour operators, your Air Transats, and whatever else. Why does it cost someone in Montreal $1,000 to go see Alberta or British Columbia? That's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. So the airlines in Canada, I know they have a business to operate, they have shareholders to respond to, But, like you were saying, all of these cultural events that are costing millions and millions and millions of dollars, which, I think a certain percentage is required, but not at the extravagant rate over the last 8 years that we've seen across the country. Why not put some of that money, just like they did in New Brunswick, towards allowing Canadians to travel and discover their own country? You know what? Enabling something like that to the individuals that might be cash strapped, families and whatnot, for them to be able to explore the rest of the country will further enable a sense of greater unity and affection for that Canadian flag. It's just it's not easy. So you know what? I put it upon I'll throw a challenge out to Prime Minister Carney. This is something that I think you and your department heads should feasibly look at in terms of providing some sort of subsidies to discover the country. I'd be the first one to jump on a plane to go out to Calgary in British Columbia. I mean, heck, why not visit the prairie provinces? It's farmland. I mean, this is a good point of our economy. Why not be able to explore a city like Regina or Saskatoon? Because it costs me as much to fly there than I would have to fly out to British Columbia. And I can take that flight money, and you know what? I could have flown down to New York for a fraction of the price, or down to Florida for a fraction of the price. No, thank you. I'd rather fly in Canada. So somebody in the government's Ottawa, help us out here. We'd love to see the country. But you're absolutely right, Gary.
And it doesn't have to be cash back. Find a way to have a tax write-off at tax time. It's a paper write-off, really, but at least you feel you're getting something back. And I can tell you, when I was in British Columbia for 2 years, the number of people I spoke with who had never been back east and always said, I've always planned to go someday. Someday has never come. And it's the same on the East Coast for going west, although a fair amount of Atlantic Canadians have spent time, at least in Alberta, and specifically Fort McMurray, with the oil sands. So, but we need that. There's no better way to get to know your country and promote your unity within your country than to be able to experience. And I've had the opportunity to pretty much touch down in every province across the country now, and it's just amazing. Even if you only get to spend a day or two or 3 or 4 days, it's what you find it's just amazing. Anyway, hopefully this new program that they've launched this summer is just the beginning, and that next year they'll be back with an expanded program, and we start moving forward in that manner. Because, a 1 hour flight, if you get the direct flight, it's 1 hour from here to St. John or Fredericton. And depending on which day it is, that's going to be over $1,000 a person for a 1 hour flight. That's insanity.
That's insanity.
And if that 1 hour direct flight, and it's the only direct flight, is full, and you have to backtrack to Toronto, and then from Toronto, you're now starting to look at, depending on, again, the time of the week and that, but you're looking at between $1,500 and $2,000 one way.
Yeah. Well, I think both of us are saying we don't want the government to fund the airlines to stuff their pockets with money. That's not what we want.
That would be return. Sorry, that was return.
A return.
But it's a lot.
Well, I think both you and I agree that we don't want the government to stuff the airlines' pockets with money so they can reduce fares for us to fly. No. Give us the opportunity to be able to afford to fly, and it'll drive more money into the pockets of the airlines and perhaps open up some routes out east, because that's ridiculous to fly out to New Brunswick. I'd have to fly to Toronto first, and then from Toronto to fly out east again. because there's no direct route anymore. I mean, that it just doesn't make any sense, Gary. And I think we have a wonderful opportunity to actually get some competition between our airlines to help drive down the prices, because if there isn't the demand we're looking for, they're just going to keep on looking at the demand and supply route and charge people exorbitant amounts, you know. So it's a big country. I mean, it is a big country to fly across. But look, at the end of the day, I mean, I've traveled all over the world. I've traveled extensively through Canada and the United States, and by far, Canada is extremely expensive to fly across, no matter which way you look at it, which I think is an absolute travesty.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean for us to digress like that, but
not at all.
That's an important point, I think, is overall as far as our economy is concerned. Joe says Carney played Trump like a fiddle, stroking his ego. Even if there is a deal in 30 days, can you trust Trump not to change it? Exactly. Hope to see Carney make some backroom deals in Europe and outflank Trump.
Nicely said.
Yeah. And Nancy is coming in with, where are we here? We have been big cruisers. We are now waitlisted for a cruise out of Montreal for a cruise to the Atlantic provinces back to Montreal. No U.S. ports. That would be kind of a unique cruise to take.
Yeah.
Good for you guys. Good for you guys. And as she says, elbows up.
Absolutely.
Joe comes back with, come on out to BC, Eddie, and buy me a beer.
I will. It's been way too long, Joe. I think the last time you and I shared a beer was about 20 years ago. So, yep, let's do it.
Where are we here? Monel comes in with, it costs less to fly to Mexico or Europe than it costs to fly to Calgary or Vancouver, sometimes even from Montreal to Toronto.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. Like, I don't get it, but anyhow, that's me. Okay, so I think we all agree that Prime Minister Carney did a hell of a job chairing this G7 summit. Now, he also, as I mentioned earlier, invited the Prime Minister of India, which created a bit of an uproar because, of course, last year they're at the center of a foreign interference issue, and CSIS and the RCMP have come out with reports, and top diplomats were expelled in both countries because India has been accused of killing a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil, and also Jagmeet Singh had protection because there were reports that there was an Indian agent looking out for him. So, like, okay, but Carney is looking at it from the fact that look at the population of India, look at the opportunity for another trading partner, and that can be beneficial in the long run. Can we get by some of the issues that have been raised? That's something I think that they're going to be working on in the back rooms. And as a result of the meeting that he had, both countries have agreed to reinstate top diplomats withdrawn last year. Mm-hmm. Now, let me get caught up here because I just wanted to mention something else. And while I'm doing that, let's just have a watch of this. So, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum was also invited and attended on day 2, as did Ukraine President Vladimir Zelensky, both hoping to meet with the U.S. president, who, as we mentioned earlier, suddenly departed Monday evening to deal with growing tensions in the Mideast. Now, Zelensky met with Carney, and following that meeting, Carney announced new aid for the embattled country.
Canada is announcing today several measures sanctions, first and foremost, against a number of individuals in Russia, against over 40 entities in Russia and beyond that are trying to contribute to the evasion of sanctions, the sanctioning of over 200 vessels in the shadow fleet that Russia is using, again, to try to evade these sanctions. That's the first thing. The second is we are providing additional military assistance, drones, helicopters, broader munitions, over $2 billion worth of assistance directly to Ukraine. And thirdly, we are dispersing the next tranche of the loan based on the frozen Russian assets, over $2 billion as well.
But first of all, thank you for your very important words, warm words, and supporting Ukraine. And we need support from our allies, and I'm here, and thank you for the military package. It's important for our soldiers to be strong at the battlefield, to stay strong out until Russia will not be ready for the peace negotiations. We are ready for the peace negotiations, unconditional ceasefire. I think it's very important, but for this we need pressure. And of course I want to speak with Prime Minister today about sanctions, additional sanctions, and thanks for the real unwavering support from your side, from all the Canadians to our people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, wasn't that
Wow.
amazing? Nobody was barking from the sidelines to, you didn't say thank you.
Yeah.
Do you remember that Oval Office?
Absolutely. And, another thing that kind of dawned on me, here you have leaders from foreign countries, and you look at Zelensky, being Slav and speaking Slav-based language, being Ukrainian. He spoke better English by far than the supposed leader of the free world in Emperor Trump. Emperor Trump can't even get a sentence together without using three words he always uses all the time in every statement he makes, and he never finishes anything to give off a clear idea of what he's talking about. And here is the eloquent English that's being used by President Zelensky. You listen to Claudia Sheinbaum. You look at the Chancellor of Germany. Of course, Britain is, they're always so eloquent with their English anyway. And every world leader speaks excellent English and makes sense. So, you know what? I was just so, not just proud of Prime Minister Carney. I was just so proud of listening to Zelensky and being very genuine in terms of his appreciation for what Canada has been doing and continues to do to help the Ukraine protect their sovereignty, and the rest of his colleagues in the European Union to help him with what's going on in the travesties that Russia is bestowing on Ukrainian people. You know what? And far from here you have Emperor Trump basically crying "woe is me" because his boss in Putin was not invited to the G7, formerly known as the G8, for which Trudeau had absolutely zero active part in that because he was even Prime Minister of Canada at that time. So he's not even factually correct, which is nothing new with Trump. So and I'm actually surprised that he didn't ask the other G7 nations to enforce their media not to talk about his good buddy Jeffrey Epstein because he was a good guy too. I mean, how far is this guy going to go? I mean, seriously. But no, what a proud moment for me to watch those two speak to each other as professionals, as great leaders for their country, and move forward in discussing business. And I'm 100% in terms of my opinion and belief that Trump didn't leave because he had other important matters to deal with, because he can run the country from his damn airplane on Corner 1. He can run the country from there. So he was running. He didn't want to have to face the Indian Prime Minister because, of course, he's laying responsibility and claiming victory. That was because of him that Pakistan and India are no longer fighting with each other. It's because of his deal, when the leaders of both countries are basically saying, what are you talking about? Does Trump want that to be a discussion point, while he's out there? And it's just good on all the G7 leaders, good on Prime Minister Carney and inviting leaders from other countries that are not part of the G7 but are directly implicated and influenced by decisions the G7 makes. I mean, how much better can you get? How much better can you get in terms of a successful summit? And when's the next one? I mean, it's next year. I know that, but isn't it being held in France? I think Macron's hosting it, right?
I don't remember, to be honest.
Yeah. I come to think of it, it's Macron hosting it next year. So you know what?
Okay.
It's going to be another successful G7 summit. And hopefully there will be a golf tournament somewhere in the United States that President Trump has to attend, and he'll leave. And then business can be conducted properly, right? I'm sorry. He just pissed me off this week.
But the other side of it is, you could hear how sincere Zelensky was in thanking Canada for the contributions that we've been making. And, he walked out of there with a total of $4 billion, $2 billion in commitments directly from the Canadian government, and then the other $2 billion from a loan based on the frozen Russian assets that we have. So, to walk away with $4 billion, that's certainly not chump change by any stretch of the imagination. Now, on the other side, I can see the opposition in the House of Commons getting a little more antsy about some of the spending. Like, where is the $2 billion going to come from, and at what cost on this end? I can see where they're getting antsy. I still buy into what Carney said very early on. I need to assess a number of things over the next couple of months so we can put together a proper budget that will deliver in the fall. I get it. I totally get it, because there are so many things that are fluid at the moment. But still, when you hear a $2 billion commitment and we haven't had a budget and we don't know for sure where it's coming from or how it's going to impact anything, I get where the opposition is coming from on this. And I think it might be beneficial for the Liberals, for the Prime Minister at some point to at least, even if it's not an official economic statement, give some kind of updated accounting as to where a chunk of the money that's been committed so far will come from. Is it because we are raising some extra money through the tariffs we have imposed? And I know that both Trudeau and Carney have said any money that we do raise as a result of the tariffs, additional funds, will be put back in to help workers who are losing their jobs and those kinds of situations. And if that's so, then fine. Like, maybe we should have an update on that so we know what's going on. And I'm sure we're not raking in. I think I saw a number the other day where the U.S. has raked in about $22 billion on tariffs alone so far. Mm-hmm. So it would be interesting to have some kind of an accounting that way, and it might not silence the opposition, but it might not give them as much fat to chew on as far as throwing barbs across the floor at the government. It's a little bit concerning, and I still, like this guy has run the Bank of England and the Bank of Canada. Mm-hmm. I have faith in him, but it's still a little bit concerning.
Yeah, you know what the beauty of what you just said is? This is why our government works. Okay, we have an opposition party here dealing with a minority government, minority, majority, it doesn't matter. The job of the opposition is to hold the leaders of our country accountable, right? We've heard some countries of late, the last couple of terms there, zero accountability in terms of anything they do. Our system works. It's not perfect, but it does work. And you know what? Whatever decisions Prime Minister Carney does make, I want our opposition to question his decisions. I want our opposition to get the leader of our country to justify decisions, especially when it comes to money, especially when the money goes to other countries. Where is it coming from? Who is it going to be benefiting? So, Gary, like you said, let our system of government work, get the accountability questions out, and let's move on and govern this country. So that's and that's exactly what you said at the beginning, Gary. You know, we have the opposition that are going to be a little, what's going on here? Wonderful. This is what their job is, and what makes our parliamentary system work so well, where there is accountability, and the accountability is going to be worked on. Prime Minister Carney has to come up with some sort of overall, I'm not talking about financial or fiscal statements, but statements in terms of what the plans are, what plans they're working on moving forward before they actually table a budget come September, October. You and I want to know. Opposition wants to know. The people of Canada want to know. So why not ask the Prime Minister these questions? And that's what I love about your statement, and got me thinking about our system here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, Monel says, I'm not sure if you guys got this video, but there's actually a video of Carney, Macron, and Trump. And Trump said something stupid, and Carney looked over at Macron and gave him a nice little wink. Didn't see that one, but I saw the one where Macron was leaning over to the Italian president, and kind of, over in the direction of Trump at the table, and all of a sudden she did the eye roll, like,
yeah, classic.
Yeah. So, he brings out the worst in people. I know.
What? You're right.
He's been bringing out the worst in me over the last couple of weeks, and I don't know. And now I de-Trump every weekend. I stay away from it as much as possible. I don't want to hear him. I don't want to see him. And if any of that stuff comes up in my YouTube feed, I just flip right on by. Find me an old video on comparing MacBooks or something. Like, I'll just sit there and veg. So, anyway. And so overall, again, a successful G7 summit. Carney did well. He made the country proud. And I think, he solidified a relationship that he's been building with a number of leaders, including the leader from Japan, as well as the European Union and the leaders from Europe. So I think that we're coming out of it as a country, and with a prime minister who has built up some pretty, he built it up beforehand, but he's, building it up even more now. Solid political capital. Mm-hmm. And that's going to bode well, I think, for us we'll probably start seeing results from this capital that he's built up within just a couple of months. And we're going to see I'm sure some new trade deals being announced with the European Union. And I know, he sat down and had a cold pint after one of the hockey games with the Prime Minister of Britain. Mm-hmm. And they were talking about some kind of a trade arrangement. So, it all seems to be coming together. So certainly coming out of it, despite what we're dealing with as far as the trade war is concerned, I think coming out of it, we are coming out with, a relatively positive feeling in a lot of ways, or at least I sense that. And I'm feeling much better about how this went. So, only time will tell, and of course we've got the 30 days. And also remember, he may have pushed the 30 days, which would take us into July, because if you recall, was it last week or the end of the week before, where Trump said deals have to be in place by July 9th or tariffs are going up again.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the July. So Carney's deflated, or at least softened that part of it by pulling the 30-day deadline, which takes us into closer to the middle of July, end of July kind of thing, closing in on the end of July. So
can you imagine he comes back from his next European trip with a beautiful, beautiful agreement with any European country and then publicize that globally while he's waiting for Trump to wake up in 30 days? Oh my God, that would be a beauty. That would be one of those situations to go behind his back and get a deal done. And then, okay, your turn, Trump. What are you going to do for us? This is what I got so far. Can you better that? Like, wow.
What's up next?
so much opportunity in these next couple of trips. So we'll, you know what? Let's sit in our chairs and wait in eagerness and anticipation, I guess.
All right. So coming up, we have Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre will be facing a leadership review. We'll have more details on that in a moment. Moving day is just around the corner here in Quebec. Have you booked your internet service at your new place? If not, check out Ebox. They offer fibre service that is solid and price competitive. They've been providing fibre service for Night Talk since late last year without any issues whatsoever. Check the link in the description below. You can qualify for a free month. All right. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre will face a leadership review likely early in the new year. The review comes after the party blew an almost 25-point lead over the Liberals and failed to form government following the snap federal election in April. And even before ballots were cast in that election, there was grumbling within the party rank and file about a number of things as the polling numbers tanked. The exact format and timing of the review is unclear at this point. And our question for you on this is, do you think the Poilievre leadership review is nothing more than political theater? Or are the Conservatives really, serious about this? Eddie, your thoughts?
I've been thinking about this one, and it's not usually I'm at a loss for words. I really don't know, Gary, if this is just a ploy to pacify the Canadian public that they're doing something in terms of solidifying the leadership of the Conservative Party or not. I really don't know. It's hard to say. Gary, I really don't know. Either way, I think the Conservative Party has to do some soul searching. Poilievre's been at the helm for I don't know how many years now. He was quite prolific in Harper's government. I think he's been leader of the Conservative Party for 10 years now, 10 years plus. We've all seen his style of managing his party. We've heard and seen some of his proposed plans on what he wants to do with the country. We heard of a lot of rhetoric. We've seen a lot of theatrics in the chamber. And you know what? Maybe the party heads are kind of looking at this and saying this is not something the Canadians are looking for in the short term or long term. I think the Conservative Party has to look at the remote possibility at this stage, I think, of a no confidence vote on something. And if there is a vote of no confidence for Prime Minister Carney and his government, are they prepared to go into the next election and win it with Poilievre at the helm? It could be a whole lot of just repeating what we just did, rinse and repeat, and we continue with the Liberal government. If I was someone in high levels of the Conservative Party, that's what I would be looking at, Gary. I think if we have a snap election being called, could we win? Right now, I would look at that as the answer as being no. And if the answer is no, why wouldn't we be able to win? And I think a lot of it circles back to Poilievre's leadership style and Poilievre's and Poilievre's checklist. in terms of how he thinks he's going to improve Canada as a country and Canadians as a society. I don't know, hard to say. Are they just trying to pacify Canadians by saying, oh, we're going to be reviewing our leadership just to buy them some time for bigger and better things? Is this to give Poilievre enough time to actually win a seat, a solid seat on his own? Maybe there's worry that he's going to go out to Alberta. The poor fellow had to give up his seat so that Prime Minister Carney has to call a by-election for Poilievre to run in, that Poilievre might not win the by-election. I mean, there's always that risk as well. So who knows, Gary? What do you think? What do you think is going on?
I think that there has been a fair amount of grumbling behind the scenes, which we saw some of it spill over to a degree as the campaign was wrapping up. And it was clearly evident that Poilievre and his campaign team had failed to make a pivot that was required to try and make up for lost ground. And the format of the review is going to be really interesting to see how they finally come to grips with that. Is Poilievre going to kind of get up and do a self-review in a lot of ways, and then or get up and just ask people, well, what did you think? Where could I improve? That kind of thing. I think it has to go. I think they really have to do a deep dive here, because clearly, despite how many times he has repeated since the election about improving the number of seats and the popular vote, the fact of the matter is he blew a 20 to 25 point lead, and blew it within a very short span of time from very early in the new year, when Trudeau announced he would be stepping down, through the federal Liberal leadership campaign into the snap election. And how they did not see all of this coming in sticking with their slogans of, like axe the tax, and Carney stole their thunder as soon as he was sworn in as prime minister after winning the leadership. He stole their thunder on that one by saying, we're going to remove the carbon tax. Boom. Mm-hmm. But they just didn't pivot to look at something else and come out in a more solid fashion. As a matter of fact, there were times, and even now, it's hard to tell if you're listening to a Liberal or a Conservative, because their campaigns and their planks were very, very similar. Mm-hmm. And then there's the uproar with the people. There were people who were ready to offer as candidates for the Conservatives, only to be, stalled, and then be told by head office in Ottawa, no, we have our own candidate picked for that riding, and see you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that, I know of one riding in New Brunswick where it happened for sure, and left a really sour taste in the mouths of Conservatives in that riding. And I've heard of at least a couple of others across the country, and I'm sure it was more than just a couple where it was done this way. And then you have, his campaign manager and her bully style and mm-hmm. tactics that she used with candidates, and clamping them all down. So you're not to take part in any public debate. You're not to speak to the media. You're not to do this. Now, some of the candidates just said, to hell with you. I'm running this campaign for my election, and I'm going to speak to whoever I damn well please. And they did. And I'll bet you that if you go back through, a few of those people who did that are some of the conservatives who actually did get elected.
Right.
So that whole tight control on things, I think that really needs a going over. Now, apparently Poilievre has been really working hard to soften his image and change his image. And you can see it when he's standing there, responding to something that's happened in the House. But it does not look
natural.
It doesn't look natural. He doesn't look comfortable in responding in that manner. So I don't know how well it's going to sell, quite frankly. And, again, apparently he came close to losing his seat in 2015, or did he lose it in 2015? I can't remember now for sure. I'd have to go back and double check it. But it was either he lost it or came very close to losing it. And apparently he spent the next 3 to 4 years knocking on every door at least 4 times in his constituency. And they just, okay, what didn't you like? What can I do to improve? What would what are you looking for? Sort of thing. And yes, his riding boundaries changed this last time around, but so did a lot of other people's across the country. And one of the things was, he's running in an Ottawa riding, and if you're talking about just taking an axe to the public service, most of your constituents either work for the public service or they have family members working for the public service.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Unless you come out with a really detailed plan and reason as to why, so that they understand, you're just going to get a lot of backs up in the air, and that's not going to spell very well for you. And the other part of it is, I don't know what kind of a constituent politician he was. Maybe he just got to a point where maybe when he had that 20, 25 point lead over the Grits, that the ego took over. And maybe he just kind of didn't really watch his assistants in the constituency office, and they weren't doing things and things weren't getting done for constituents. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he lost his seat. So not only did he blow a huge lead, but he lost his seat.
Yeah.
Why he's still leader, why he didn't resign the night of the election or the next day is beyond me.
That in itself is a vote of non-confidence if I ever saw one.
Yeah, I totally agree. To me, that's somebody just, wanting to hang on to the strings of power, whatever strings may be there to hang on to. I think he should have resigned. I really do. On the 28th or the 29th, and be done with it. But nope, he didn't. And now the MP in Alberta that's giving up his seat officially resigned. So now the resignation is in, and I think there's a period that they have to go through before now it can be declared vacant. And then once it's officially declared vacant, then it's up to Carney to pick a date. And Carney has said he's not going to play around with it. He'll get a date out there. But then, it could be in the middle of summer that the date comes out. Okay, you're going to the polls in the middle of summer. Well, what kind of a turnout are you going to get at the polls in the middle of summer?
Yeah, and who are you going to get for your turnout?
Well, especially if it's a more rural riding, because a lot of those people will be working their farms.
True.
And they're not going to be, after just voting in one election, I can't see them, 2 or 3 months, 4 months later, being really interested in the middle of a hot summer and trying to get their crops out and everything. Like, how much interest they're going to have in going through this all over again.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll see. But you could get, depending on how they format it, and even if they format it in such a way to try and really keep a tight rein on things, it still could get, because there are enough conservatives who are totally PO'd about what happened and how it happened and everything that went down behind the scenes, that they could break loose from the format anyway, and it could get really, really nasty.
True.
Frankly, not that I really want to see, and I think they're looking at maybe January for this review, and not that I want to see January here in winter, because winter is not one of my favorite seasons. I can't wait to see how this all goes down.
How it turns out, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So,
and you know what?
Anyway.
He's gonna have to polish off his playbook, Gary, in terms of what he says to Alberta, what he says to Canada. It's very, very important. I think both you and I, if we were his campaign managers, we'd say, stop harping on what happened 10 years ago. What's your plan tomorrow? What's your plan for the following week? What's your plan for the next month? What's your plan for the next 4 years? As opposed to just harping on the past 10 years and the Liberal government over the last 10 years, If there was a suggestions I could make to him, it would be like, that's enough, buddy. Let's move on, Yeah.
You have a fan club, Eddie.
Nice.
Okay. All right. So up next, Eddie is here with his Stanley Cup obit. And our question for you is, where did the Oilers go wrong? First, though, a reminder, we are still in elbows up mode. And if you want to break free of US-based cloud storage like iCloud, OneDrive, or Google Drive, check out sync.com, a Canadian-based cloud service, which means you are covered by Canadian privacy regulations. The service is cross-platform, pricing is competitive, and in Canadian dollars. There is an affiliate link in the description below where you can sign up for a free 5 gig account to try out sync.com. And here we are, Eddie. The time has come. Time to deal with the disappointment of the Florida Panthers sending the Edmonton Oilers packing for home empty-handed. Eddie?
One last time, Gary, one last time. Thank you for that wonderful intro. Well, Gary, the Stanley Cup. I've said it often, it's the most difficult trophy and championship to win in all of professional sport. The Stanley Cup, it represents hockey glory for the past 132 years. It was first awarded as the Challenge Cup in 1893 and awarded by Frederick Arthur Stanley, who happened to be the Governor General of this beautiful country of ours called Canada, and was presented to the top amateur team in Canada. Now, that first team, take a wild guess where it came from that won this Challenge Cup, Gary.
The first in Montreal.
That was in Montreal, of course, to a team known as the Montreal Amateur Athletic Association, who were the first Stanley Cup champions in 1883. Gary, Stanley Cup championships, as you well know, tales of horrific injuries players endure and play through. They're so numerous. Tales of the cup getting damaged during celebrations. And you know what, Gary? It's only been 24 hours, and this year is absolutely no exception. This Stanley Cup, which was won by the Montreal Canadiens an astounding 24 times, Gary, and followed by the Toronto Maple Leafs, who won 13, last one back in 1967.
I knew you were going to zing in there.
I couldn't resist. And the last Canadian team to win it was the Montreal Canadiens back in 1993. So, of course, this year, just like with last year, all the hopes of Canada has been on the shoulders of the Edmonton Oilers to finally bring the comeback home to Canada. And last night, Gary, alas, the far better team won. All 34.5 pounds of Lord Stanley's chalice was hoisted by the defending champions, the Florida Panthers, who have won their second cup in a row in the last 3 Stanley Cup appearances. Gary, this series wasn't even close. Last year went to Game 7. This year, Game 6, and they got roasted again yesterday, 5-1. You know what? And I talked to you about this before. So much for my theory that the team with the most Canadian players wins. that wasn't the case this year, although on the Florida Panther team, the majority of the players are Canadian. So at least I'll go with that for now. And you know what? The Florida Panthers were in a class by themselves. One of the records that they just hit was that they led the Cup Finals for 255 minutes. That means the Edmonton Oilers, pretty much the entire series except for one game, were playing catch-up hockey most of the time. I mean, they either got scored in the first period very early, they were down 2 goals very quickly, and actually getting scored on in late periods. And my good buddy Joe out in BC, he was absolutely right when we started talking about Stanley Cup predictions, and I said, the Edmonton Oilers are going to get up in there and they have a good chance to win the cup. And Joe, at the end of the day, was right. Shoddy defense, which you and I both saw in the games, and inconsistent goaltending, which came to bear during the Stanley Cup series. And you know what? I really hope that the Edmonton Oilers are learning, unlike the Maple Leafs, that you can't have 50% plus in your salaries tied up to the top 4 or 6 elite players and expect to win a cup. Oilers are very much like that with Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and a few other players that form, that gobble up most of the salary cap, just like the Maple Leafs in their core 4. You shut down those players, what's left? You look at the Florida Panthers. I mean, these guys are so balanced right across all 4 lines, all positions, and there are no superstars. They play hard hockey, goaltending, and defense wins championships, Gary. And I think that's what we saw. And it's rather unfortunate for the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, they freewheel, they skate hard, fast hockey, but that's just one component of hockey. I mean, it's got to be goaltending, great defense, and hard grit up front. You can't rely on just superstars. And Gary, this playoff, I mean, it's not short of stories. I mean, wonderful stories. An old record was tied, and this was recorded by none other than Maurice Richard of the old Montreal Canadiens dynasty in the 50s, who scored 4 goals in a Stanley Cup final. Sam Reinhart, one of those muckers on the Florida team, scored 4 goals yesterday. So his name is neck and neck with Maurice Richard, which is a remarkable accomplishment and compliment for the young man. And of course, this year, another story was Sam Bennett, who won the Conn Smythe for playoff MVP. Well deserved. I really thought that Greg's main man from the Maritimes, Brad Marchand, former Boston Bruins captain, I really thought he was going to win the Conn Smythe. I call him an Oiler killer the last episode. He scored 2 in Game 5 against the Edmonton Oilers. I think he scored 5 or 6 against the Edmonton Oilers. And you know what? For a veteran, it's so good to see the Rat actually continuing to make an impact, even though he's playing for a different team. And by the way, the last time that Brad Marchand won a Stanley Cup was with the Bruins in 2011. So it's a 14-year gap between winning cups, and I think that's the third longest in NHL history. And the other story is Matt Tkachuk. I mean, last year he played with a fractured sternum, where his brother had to help him get undressed and redressed and shower him. He was so hurt. This year, Gary, this guy played with a tendon torn from his bone. You know how painful that's got to be, playing with a tendon torn from your bone? Yeah. And he had a hernia in the same abdominal area. And he played and he scored yesterday and he hit. So it's not just a Matt Tkachuk thing. This is when you're playing hockey at the highest level in the world, you are going to get bumps and bruises, and you're playing exhibition games. You're playing 82 regular season games. You're playing potentially up to 28 playoff games if they go 7 games in a series. I mean, this is one tough sport. And you know what? Hats off to Matt Tkachuk. Hats off to the Florida Panthers, Edmonton Oilers for making the playoffs. And hats off to all the the 800 plus employees being players of the National Hockey League for playing in one of the most difficult sports there is in the world. And it was a great playoff series. Were captivating. Although the Stanley Cup was not what I expected it to be, it was still a wonderful series. And the other story, Gary, that you and I talked about over coffee last time, the death threats. I mean, the Edmonton Oilers goaltender Skinner, his wife was receiving death threats because of the play of Skinner on the ice. And a lot of these death threats are coming from people hiding behind a Facebook profile or whatnot, and a lot of them were based on people placing parlay bets on a player's performance and losing thousands of dollars because of a stupid bet. And these professional athletes are getting death threats, and it's not just something that's really becoming prevalent in the National Hockey League, but all professional sports, especially here in North America, since gaming got deregulated. You're looking at pitchers, catchers, batters, receivers in the NFL, players in the NBA. This story is just becoming more and more prevalent as time goes on, which is extremely sad. And you know what? We just have to hope and pray that nobody carries through with their threats. But by the same token, this has got to work on somebody performing in their sport or on the ice. In this particular case, worrying about whether or not somebody's going to run a car through your home with your wife sitting in it. So that was the only downside with the Stanley Cup playoffs. But it was another successful season. I hate Gary Bettman, but you know what? The people who run your league and the players who showcase their talents for everyone to watch did a great job again this year. And you know what? We have next year to look forward to, Gary. We're very hopeful the Leafs are going to do a hell of a lot better and actually listen to me for a change on how to play hockey and how to put a team together so they can be competitive next year and make it beyond the second round. I know the Canadians will be there, but you know what? And we've also got the Olympics next year, Gary, to look forward to. I mean, this year we had the Four Nations tournament, which was a dandy. And this year we have the Winter Olympics in Italy. So it's going to be another wonderful display of hockey skills around the world.
And are they not expanding that Four Nations tournament? They're going to bring in some more teams.
Yeah, they are speaking about it. I mean, look, unfortunately, you have countries like Slovakia, you have countries such as Czechia, which typically are part of these tournaments. I think they're going to be invited next time around because, look, they have to stop the NHL schedule, which is tough enough as it is. And, to extend the tournament by adding new teams, you're basically pushing the Stanley Cup playoffs potentially into the beginning of July. So I think that's what they're very cognizant about, but there has been talk about bringing those two nations in as well as Denmark and Switzerland, I believe. So we'll see. Time will tell. If it's going to rake in the bucks for Gary Bettman and the owners, well, you know what? The dollar talks, and they're going to end up doing it. So at least you and I can look forward to the Olympics, the TV deals, yeah. So we can look forward to the Olympics and. Look, next year, hopefully, the Panthers team is going to remain relatively intact. Hopefully, get into their fourth playoff appearance and maybe a three-peat, which hasn't happened in a very, very, very long time. As for the Oilers, there's the NHL's July 1st free agency. They got 18 or 19 players signed up, which is good. Leon Draisaitl signed last year, a contract extension. But Connor McDavid is eligible to sign an extension this year. Is he going to sign an extension, or is he going to get to a point that I've been here for 10 years and we haven't won a cup yet? Maybe I want to move somewhere else, which I think will be pretty hard on the Oilers fans. Mm-hmm. And I watched Connor McDavid's closing interview. It's a very emotional time for a reporter to ask questions of a player who just lost the Stanley Cup championship, right? But at some point he was, you can see tears in his eyes, and he was basically saying we kept trying the same thing over and over again. Now, if that wasn't a direct jab at the coach, I don't know what is. So Obviously, there is some animosity there. Maybe it's just the emotion off the sleeve at a very, very difficult time. But if McDavid does not sign this year, oh my God, there's going to be a bonus-spiel of people fighting to get Connor McDavid on their payroll, which comes with the risk. He's going to be asking something like $20 million. How many teams are willing to put $20 million in one player while having to partition whatever is left to everybody else? Well,
Isn't
we've
that
learned
a page out of the Leafs playbook?
a Leafs playbook, and it's becoming a page out of the Oilers playbook if they're not very careful. And we'll see. Look, the Canadians right now are, they got 3 or 4 gunners out there that are paid well, but they're not being paid elite salaries. Are these players going to be asking for elite salaries at some point and leave the Canadians? I don't know. That's just a world. That's just a world of salary caps in the National Hockey League. So, great year for hockey. It's going to be a great year for hockey next year, Gary. And you know what? I'm predicting that the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to make the playoffs next year. That's as far as I'll go, man. I'm sorry. I love you, man, but nah, that's as far as I'll go. So I just want to thank our viewers and guests for listening to my show, listening to this portion of our show about the Stanley Cup. It's been a lot of fun. I really appreciate the listeners checking in on me.
Yeah, it has been a lot of fun, and you really do your homework for this segment for sure. So, kudos to you on that aspect of it. And as far as the little Leafs shot, I'm keeping that clip. As soon as the show is over, I'm going into the recorded version and grabbing that clip, and it's going into a special file for later this year.
Okay, great. Play it at the beginning of the year.
Exactly. Joe says picking up Marchand at the trade deadline was an awesome move. If it wasn't for Sam Bennett's 15 goals, Marchand
would have won
may
the
have
Conn
won.
Smythe.
Yeah. And then I don't know, did you see his other comment that popped up earlier?
No.
Okay. The Oilers' Achilles heel was their goaltending along with a porous defense. Florida is a solid, well-rounded team with 4 solid lines.
Joe, you called it 2 months ago. You called it back in September when we talked about this, that the Oilers have defense and porous goaltending issues. Your money was right on. You were absolutely right.
Yep, very much so. Okay, well, it's coming up to that time of day, actually, Eddie, where it's time to put a cap on it and wrap it up. So, from summit deadlines to party tensions and a playoff run gripping the country, there's no shortage of pressure points tonight. I want to thank you for joining us, and remember to like, share, and subscribe to help our stream and channel get exposed to more people like you. And if you are watching the replay or one of the on-demand segments, join the conversation and leave your comments below. We will respond to them. Night Talk returns in 7 days. I'm Gary MacDonald. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Well, it seems they don't want us to say goodnight.
Oh, wow. Okay.